everybody, Happy New Year! It's Festool Live. It's 12 noon and it's Friday. Everybody, have a great 2021. Have a great... From the Festool family.
There it goes.
Have a great 2021 and enjoy the pre-recorded best of that we have prepared for you. And thank you very much. And don't forget to subscribe.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Cut.
Good?
All right.
Okay.
That's what I realize until you're inside how much this actually, you can smell the gunpowder.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start right over here. Come over here. Well, there's going to be two versions of this. There's going to be one that's the set version and one that's the EBQ version, and I'll go through both of them because you need to decide which one you want, okay? But if we come over here, and when we always did a training on the MFK 700, I would have everybody in the training open this up and go, so how does that look? And everybody goes, when they open it up, they'd go, my God, that's wicked confusing. What do all these pieces and parts go with? How do you set it up? What are they for? And then I'll say, well, look, there's a picture right here on the sustainer. And they go, that's still too wicked confusing. Okay, so let's hopefully today, my job is to take some of the confusing out of it. I'm going to set up my Vaxis as my clamp today because whenever I'm working with an MFK 700, this really speeds up the operation. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about, or first thing I'm going to show you, is this is the motor that I take out. You see this? Look at this base right here. This is the vertical base, and this is the horizontal base that comes in the set. This is actually not perfectly horizontal. It produces the motor to the material at 1.5 degrees, and I'll explain why later for trimming edge banding. But what I want to do is I want to take the motor off of the vertical base like this. Okay, this is the motor. This has got a through hole to change the router bit. Okay, of course, that's the collet. I have a 6mm bit in here because we're going to run a groove with this later. But it's simple. If I spin this and I put my thumb in there like this, that goes into a hole and locks it in, so it's only a 1-wrench system. Okay, so there you go. I'm going to take that motor out. As we look at this base, some of the things that people get confused of on this base, the vertical base, is because let's look at this. Here you have a knob in your micro adjustment. Okay? To adjust the height, you loosen this knob. But on the vertical base, there's an additional knob here, and it links to this post. And that's how you adjust it. Okay? The nice thing, as I turn the base over, you're going to notice right here, and Big D, are you right here too? Okay, you're going to see where it's threaded. So this is how versatile this is. You folks know that these template guides here, we call this the lock nut, and this is the template guide itself. Well, with our system, the MFK 700, that thread matches the thread that's right there. So you can use this all day long for template work. Okay, and it's a nice, small, portable, well-powered router. So that is why this is 1.5 degrees, because this brings that router bit that I chuck up, and I usually use this router bit, okay? And you're going to see these router bits in the catalog, because this is the only router bits next to the MFK section, because there's certain dimensions, like this is really short right here, because when I chuck it up into the router, okay, it has to fit between here and here. Okay, now, it is an 8mm shank bit, and yes, the MFK does accept 1/4-inch shank bits, because we include a 1/4-inch collet, but I tell everybody, trying to source a bit like this without a bearing is pretty difficult. You want to put this bearing on. This comes in the MFK set, and this allows you to follow, watch, while I have that base on, you'll see how it all goes together, the front edge there. This never gums up because it only goes at one speed, your speed. Okay, and that allows you to follow that front edge. That's why we call it a follower bearing. All right, so if we look at the base, you're going to see these two holes right here, and you're going to see this locking knob. Wherever you see the locking knob, it doesn't go on here like this. It goes on here like this. See? And I'm just going to put that locking knob in all the way and tighten it up. That pin goes into the notch of that rod. Okay, there's a window here. You open it up because you see right here, that accepts this, your dust shroud, just like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, and this is, I think, this is a little bit of the confusing part of this, is how do I get this to align with this table here, because this is going to go on here like this, and that bearing's going to follow, and I'm going to trim that banding. And I always tell everybody, when you first use one of these, just take your time and learn it. And when I say learn it, do some test cuts with it. Okay, now, I don't have to look at the bearing, okay? I know that bearing's hitting that front side, so let's look. Okay, this is the perfect example. Excuse me. Okay, that's flush, but man, I'm starting to cut into that melamine coat. And you see where I've cut deeper there and shallower there? That'll show you that angle, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is just take it like this, and I'm going to go shallower, so I'm going to go this direction, and I'm going to line it up. And I'm going to go 1, 2, 2/10 of a millimeter, and do another test cut. Okay. So right there, and you guys know this. Wait for it. What's your best feeler gauge? It's your fingers, right? Okay, so when I check edge banding, I don't go like this. I use my fingernail and I bring it across. And guess what? That's flush. So I'm going to run this, and then I'm going to take it a step further. Okay, so what I have there is what? That's glue residue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick scraper. Okay, this is the one we suggest with the Conturo, and look, I'm just going to scrape that glue up, just like this. See, look at that. Look how perfect that is. That's why we call it the perfect edge. Look at that. Okay, it's absolutely perfectly flush. All right, so let's talk about drawer boxes. This is a through tenon drawer box. Okay, I'm going to be using material today. A melamine coat, so you can really see it, and you can see all the measurements and oopsie and all the marking. We got whoopsie count going. Okay, this is the first one. Okay, and you can purchase this. This is drawer box material. This is just basically 4-inch, 100 millimeter. You can get it in, I think, 6-inch, 8-inch, 2-inch increments here in the States and North America. I think this one is a 10-inch drawer box, and you're going to see the spacing. I'll discuss spacing for you. Okay, so you can see all the things on how to do this. And I wanna mention a few things as we were working with this drawer that I ran into early on, so you can see some of the hiccups that you can avoid. And I'm also going to talk about the bracket here, okay, and this little wing. See how that comes down? And I'm going to also show you the safety factor on all of this. Okay, so this flap, in case you don't know, okay, from here to the center of the bit is 37 millimeters. That's the same distance from the front of the cabinet to the center hole, or for your hinge plates and for your adjustable hinges in 32 millimeter cabinetry. So it's 37 from here and 37 from here. But there's sometimes you need an additional offset or a reference point, and that's 20 millimeters to center. So you'll understand my labeling now. I use both because when I'm building a drawer box, and Big D, I think you got this all set up here, okay, so people can see this. This is a drawer box, and I labeled it. I cut, a back and a front and 2 sides. The 2 sides are 509 millimeter, okay, and the front and the back are 330 millimeter. Okay, so when I put the tenon in, okay, because I'm going to be, and this is basic drawer box construction, everybody, okay? I need to put something in here, whether it's a dovetail, a crown staple, or anything, a woodworking joint. I've seen people use dowels, okay? We're going to use dominoes today, because guess what? You're pulling right here. Hang on, come on. I'll show you where you need that shear strength. Look, right here, right? Okay, see, and we're going to put exposed tenons here. Here's one I built here with blind tenons. You use the 4 millimeter for that. Okay, but the shifting of material like spoons, utensils, whatever in there, you have to make sure that that'll hold up over time. So it's basically building 101. If I use that 37 millimeter pin or flap here, my tenons would look like this, because I did this one this morning. Look, I went 37 from here and 37 from here. Now, does that look okay? It does. But what I want it to look like is this. Say I put a side mount on here that's 20 millimeters from here on center and 37 from here. Follow? I don't want to use 20 because 20 would get into my captured bottom. Okay? So hopefully you're following all this. I made a bunch of samples to talk about that. So I'm going to take this piece like this, and you know that that's my side, so my front and back are going to go in between my sides. Now, Chris, can you come swing over here like this? This is as simple as it gets. This is how you mark your board. Look. See that? Because that line is where your plate of your domino is going to lie. Okay? Now, if you really think about this, my plate's going to lie here, so this is why I mark my boards like this. And make sure you swing in here. Or, Big D, you got this? I mark a V. V is for vertical. This cleans up with degreaser really quick, your pencil marks. So I mark my boards religiously, so I can make sure I don't forget. Because think about it. If I'm doing a drawer box, that means I might be doing 5, 6, 10 drawer boxes. You can get turned around really quick. I also do this. I'm going to be plunging vertically, and I mark this 20, and I mark this 37. It's just a reminder, and you're going to see also I've done that on the other boards, okay? And I'm just going to mark this 20 and 37. Once you get set up with this you can wail on this really quick. It's really easy. Now on this one, I'm just going to write a big H. And look what my mark is. You'll get turned around if you don't mark your boards, because look, this is where my mark is. That's where my plate's going to lie. This is the outside of your front and back. I've seen people get offsets before, and it's very slight like this, and that's because they worked the plate on the inside. So mark your boards and just make a look. 37, 20. I'm gonna turn it around. 20 and 37. And I've done that on my other boards. They're called collets. This is what holds the router bit in the machine. Okay? The 1010, and by the way, these are the same collets for the MFK 700. When did we cover that? 2 weeks ago? Last week. Okay. So it takes a 1/4 inch router bit shank and an 8 millimeter. So there you go. So when we set this up, and by the way, I got all kinds of stuff set up that we could talk about today, but there's a couple of super duper accessories that for the 1010 that you may not even know about. I'm going to cover those today. Okay, so when we look at woodworking joinery, creating a dado goes cross grain and it goes from end to end. I'm going to do that one today. Or you can do a stop dado. You can stop it precisely on a line. Or you could do a double stop dado. Duh, it's a mortise. Okay, but I want to step through setting depth on the router, setting up the guide stop, and setting up limit stops. All right, so follow me on this. We're going to create an 18 millimeter dado. All right, so I grabbed an 18 millimeter diameter bit with an 8 millimeter shank. Follow? Good. So what I'll do is I'll do it right over here. Big D, you get the zoom in on this, right?
Yep, we're good.
Good. Okay, so you'll see a couple of similarities with the 1010 and the MFK 700. They use the same wrench and the same collet. So I'm going to take a router bit and I'm going to chuck it up there. You know, you always hear, how far do you chuck up the bit? I usually push it all the way in and bring it out a skosh. All right? You don't want to bottom out the shank of the bit. And then on the 1010, it has a through hole. Can we see that?
Yep.
Do you see that through hole? That's in the arbor shaft. There's another machine that has that, or 2 more machines that have that. Guess what? When you press the button on your 500 and 700, that's the arbor shaft. It has a through hole. So to lock the arbor shaft to tighten the wrench, you press this green button right here. You get it to go in the hole, and you just tighten it up like this. Okay? Do you notice how I did it on its side? I didn't do it like this. That's awkward. Do it on its side and use leverage. Okay, so that's how you chuck up a bit. This is what is known as a guide stop. Right? Actually, that's the guide stop. These are the rods. Okay, so when you set up a guide stop, I always deadhead it in here like that. I take this one and deadhead it in here like that. And I'm going to flip this over. D, are you on this?
Yep.
I want to point out, you guys know, you probably all have a track saw out there. Hopefully a Festool track saw. Okay? And you know when you put it on this rib of the rail right here, okay, you know you have to turn the cams to knock out the lateral tolerance, right? Well, guess what? That's what these screws are right here and here. See them?
Yep.
You have to knock out the lateral tolerance. So when you take the guide stop and you put it on this rib, I always use the rods because guess what? It's a bigger lever. I can really feel the play in there. You just take it. I grab one side and it squeezes on and stays there. Okay? Pretty simple. Now, let's talk about a little bit about router safety. I do this every time with a router, everybody. Number one, I always check to see if it's cycled off before I put the plug-it cord in. I check everything is tight. I call this making sure the kit's tight, right? And then I'll put, and when I'm putting with the router on the guide stop, look where my hands are. Look at my hand. It's right here on this knob. Okay? Now I'm doing a dado. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my plug-it cord and put it in. You'll see where I wrap this up. But now I want to talk about this, and here's a cool tip I learned early on. Now, if I started the router right here and plunged and went in, boy, that dust wants to kick this way. What if I go right here with my router and I make a quick mark, right? And I plunge here, I go all the way down. Now the dust has a chance to capture here. When I come back, I'll suck it all up. And then guess what? Go in from here, and I eliminate a lot of the dust. Watch the technique. Okay, so I'm going to start it up. Okay, I'm going to plunge right here. Oh, man, my eye's pretty good today. I'm going to go all the way through. I'm going to come back and capture that dust. And then I'm going to come in and get the rest. And you're going to see where that's not a lot of dust for what I just accomplished. It's called creating the dam. And now you have a great, great dado. Oh, let's check it out. Look at that. There's no movement in there. I have to word this right. These are the installation organizer sets. We have metric and we have imperial. So when you look at the you look at the top. Chris, come up here. Let's get a top view. Okay. They are. Everybody's asking a question. What is coming in the sets? All right. So the top part here with all the drivers. Okay. They're identical. Remember that from my cousin Finney? Identical. All right. But I'm going to go through it so you can see. On each of them, you got a Posi Drive 2. All right. Posi Drive number 2. You got a Phillips number 1, 2, and 3. Okay. You got a Torx 25. You got nut drivers. Okay. You got a 1/4 inch. You got a 5/16. It's all called out here, a 3/8. Now this one's the one that was confusing to me. It says SZ35. Look, it's a slotted screwdriver. Okay, you get 2 sizes, and I'll just pull that out. Okay, and I'm gonna go through a few things with these. And what's wicked cool is you get a number 2 square drive. Okay, but if you're in Canada, it's a Robertson's. All right. Okay. Now, as I take these out, woohoo! Look what's in the bottom. This is the difference between the two. You got Imperial, okay? You got Imperial hex set. You got Imperial wrenches, and you got an Imperial adjustable wrench. Now, what's cool? They all have the name Festool on it, and here you have, okay, and you can see the sizes. I'll just call them out really quick. Look, you get a 1/4 inch, and by the way, this one's wicked important. I'll show you why in a few minutes. You get a 5/16, a 3/8, a 7/16, and a 1/2 inch. On the metric side, okay, you get the metric hex keys, and I love this set. They're ball ball ended on the long arm and just regular on the short arm. That's important. Okay, but you get an 8 millimeter, a 10 millimeter, a 13 millimeter, a 17 millimeter, and a 19 millimeter. Now, here's what's really nice about them. Okay, you got the open end, but these are geared. Okay, so forward and flip it over, you got reverse. I'm going to tell you, watch this, and we'll start here. I'm going to grab the 10 millimeter. Say you're in a tight spot, right? And you got to get that. Look how thin that is. And you got to get it in there. And check this out. Look, I got to adjust this. I got to loosen this up or tighten it. Okay? And I don't have to, look, I don't have to take it off the flats every time. It's geared. Okay, I just put it on once. It's kind of like the ratcheting, call it on the OF 1400 and OF 2200, right? It's a ratcheting. You save time instead of putting it on the flats and removing it and then going to the next flats. Look at the size of that slotted screw. Hey, Big D, can we get that over here? Look at the size of that. See how it's narrow right there? So I don't know if you know this, but this is a true cabinet maker's screwdriver where it's on the shaft here, it continues all the way down, all right? Where this is not a slotted cabinet maker, okay, where it flares out like that. But, you know, somebody asked me one time, what's the difference between a cabinet maker screwdriver and a regular slotted screwdriver? It's just that the shaft is continued all the way down. Now, where do you use that? I know the perfect place for this, right here, okay? And I've taught you this in, I think it was episode like 5 or 6, right, on the Tracksaw Essentials. I showed you how to connect guide rails, right? So guess where the slotted screw goes? Right here, okay? It's perfect for it. So when you put the two rail connectors on there, I always offset them. And what I'll do is I'll shimmy it in there. So when you connect rails, you put a little bit of space in there. And then you take the track saw, and I'm going to slide this around so you can see it right here, okay? And with that little bit of space, see these two cams? Let me lift this up so you can see it a little bit better, okay? Look, I could take that, and those two cams bring the important rib into alignment, and I could just take that and tighten the screw here and tighten the screw here. And this is the perfect Festool screwdriver for that. Whoop, 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 whoop. All right, good. Look at all the different sizes you have for hexes on the metric side. You get a 2, 2.5, 3, 4, a 5, a 6, an 8, and a 10. Okay, anybody who's ever been to class, you know my favorite number, right? It's the 5 millimeter. Okay? It's simple. This 5 millimeter, you have one 5 millimeter hex key, you can fix a lot and calibrate a lot of daggone things in the Festool system. Look, the parallel guides, those two screws, when you adjust this right here, we did that in the FS guide rail. You can use this, the 5 millimeter, for what? It's got a ball end. Look, you can also, if you forget, on your, that's the screw that you use to change your blade on the arbor. It's 5 millimeter. You know one lives right here on the TS saw. In the TS75 also has one. So you could change the blade with that. And if you ever happen to lose that, that's the 5 millimeter. Whoo! Okay, now a couple other things. The 4 millimeter. Where do you use that? Right over here. Watch. Over here, Chris. Okay, that's the screw for adjustments for the what? The knockdown fasteners for the DF700. It's a 4 millimeter hex, and that's what's nice about a ball joint on a hex key, because you can get into those tight spots like that and just virtually take that right off, just like that. Let's just take this for instance. This is a typical cabinet door or a typical cabinet. I'm just going to pop this off. Okay, this is a typical frameless cabinet. No face frame. All right. So I want to teach you how to measure for a full overlay door. Starting next year, we're going to start building different doors. We're going to build cabinets with you on Festool Live. What I want to point out is there's basically 3 types of doors. There's full overlay, which we're going to build today. There's partial overlay, and there's inset. There's slight variations, but basically hinges, hey, Mom, on those 3 types of doors. Now, someone may contradict me, well, I do raised panel door. That's a style of door. I do a 5-piece beater door. That's a style of door. You could take every one of those doors and make it a full overlay. We call it the reveal around the door. There's a 2mm on this side. There's a 2mm on this side. In each door, I take 2mm off on the inside. Someone may contradict me and say, well, why don't you just take 1mm off on that side? No, because you want 2, 4, and 2. Because if let's say this is a typical wall cabinet, when you bang another cabinet up against here in a run of boxes, you have 2mm here, you can have 2mm on the outside of that door. So that'll be 4. So when you look in a kitchen, a frameless kitchen, and you're looking at the spacing between the doors and the cabinets, they should most of the time be equal. So in saying that, I have 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, and 2 here. So if I remember right, 4 times 2 is 8.
That's right.
Not bad?
Nope.
I'm getting better at this metric stuff. Okay, so if we, look, I got the math laid out here. You can go back and reference it. So the width of cabinet here is 768 millimeters. I kept it easy for us. Subtract 8. I have 3, and divide by 2. Okay, so it's 760 divided by 2 is the door size is 380 millimeter. Okay, each door is 380 millimeter. Pretty simple. Okay, now, all my rails, these are rails. These are called stiles. Verticals are stiles. In between that is what? A rail. So rails, you have to calculate. Okay, stiles, it's 2 millimeters from the top, 2 millimeters from the bottom. So if the height of the cabinet is 768 millimeters, subtract what? 4. So that is my stile size or length is 764 millimeters. Now here's where it gets pretty easy for the math. I'm just going to grab a quick 6x40 domino. When I put these together, I put them with a 6x40 domino. And if my width of rails and stiles, or rails and stiles is 50 millimeter, I take the overall door width, which is 380, okay, and do what? Subtract 100, because 50 and 50, if I'm correct, is 100. And that is, and you'll see right here, that is my rail size, 280. Instead of trying to calculate an integral tenon and subtracting it, or if you've ever done a cope and stick door, you have to calculate that little tenon in there with the cope joint. It gets really confusing, okay? Where this is just really simple. Overall door width, subtract 100, that's my rail size. I might as well just start right here. I showed you how to do the inside of the face, because this is where we want to put our groove, okay? Now, what I did is instead of writing my parallel edge guide on one singular piece, okay, because check, look, that's my center line, and I adjusted this to be perfectly on center, okay? And this, for me, with a router, is a recipe of disaster. That has tip all over it, doesn't it? Okay, so what we do is we create a firm, solid base for that MFK to ride on. And the easy way to do it is you're going to have a boatload of these doors as long as you stack, you know, where we have, say this is my inside here. It's like putting a book together. Okay, there's my inside, right? Look, I stack them vertically like this, and it's my face. I put them in the clamping elements like this. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it's for... There you go. And I take my clamping elements and I stack them like this. Okay, follow? So I got my depth set of my bit, 9 millimeters right here with my MFK. You'll see that. Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's exactly in the center as long as that parallel edge guide rides on every single solitary piece that has one of these marks on it, known as the face. I want to mill into all of these, okay? And I'm going to do these tight and these loose. You'll understand why in a few minutes. Okay, now, once again, I am going to use this for my setup of my domino joiner. Let's step through my domino. Instead of balancing on this like this and I get 50 of these, I'm going to set it up with what? The trim stop. So this goes on the plate right here, just like this, and you lock it in right here with these two tabs into the top of your Domino 500, and I'm going to flip it over. When I flip it over, hopefully, Big D, you can come in here. There's a scribe center line here. All right, and I'm going to take this, or you could use the cursor right in the center. Okay, but I'm going to take this, I'm going to line it up. Okay, I'll loosen these two so you can all see it, and I'll take it and I'll bring it right in. So now what I've done is I've put a holding fixture jig on my domino joiner so I don't have to think about it. Every single one. This speeds up the operation exponentially. That's the OF2200. Any questions? Okay, thank you for tuning in to Festool Live. We really appreciate it. Happy Festool Friday. Just kidding. Every time I pull this router out, everybody wants to know what this is. Now, there's a lot of folks out there that may own this, and you don't even know what this tab's for, okay? It is really easy to understand when someone shows you why that tab is on there, okay? And I'm going to step through it right now. I actually did a board here. We'll actually turn the router on and run it today. But say you get a big round over bit like this. I'm just going to bring this down. And this is how you set up a bit, okay? Look, see that? You get a big round over profile. You spent a pretty coin on that round over. You want to maximize it. Okay? Now, the first thing I did, which I'll pull myself back and show you, is let's look at how the router locks down. I have seen so many people using this router, and when they lock it down, they take this knob and watch, and they crank it. You don't have to. See this little white mark right here on the knob? And there's a little notch right here. Okay? As soon as you turn it back down or turn it past that in the locked position, that's locked now. It's not going to move on you, so don't over crank it. Cool. All right, so I'm going to take it, I'm going to eyeball it and bring it down here. And you've done this. I know you have. I've done this. When you're setting up a round over bit like that, you want to maximize a profile, okay? So you set it up, and that looks pretty good. You eyeball it like that, okay? And let's look at this board. And I'm going to swing by Chris so I can grab my inspection light. Yep. So you run that bit right here. Check this out, okay? And you look at it and you go, you know what? That's pretty good, but did I maximize the profile? So you reset it, and you go too deep. You see that little fillet you've created? See that? Hopefully that's capturing on the video.
Yep.
Okay, so guess what you got to do? You got to sand that down or replane it. If that's on a countertop, that's a heck of a lot of sanding, right? You don't want that. Or if you were like me, I would sell that for more. It's an architectural defect. I'm just kidding. Never mind. Okay. Here's the perfect. This is the perfect what you want. That is maximizing that expensive bit profile. But to get there is easy. Okay, and you know what? I'm halfway there. So here's what I'm going to show you. I have it set here. I'm close enough, all right? If I come in here, and hopefully we get this, Big D, okay? I'm going to release this. I have it locked on. Remember, I showed you how to lock it on. I'm going to take it, and we have these different turret steps, okay? That's so you don't take the whole thing all at once. But if we can get in here to see this, see, this is your last turret stop, and it's actually a step. This here, I'm going to bring my pencil in here so you can see this right here. That is the second to last pass stop. That is an offset from there to there of 2 millimeters. But you see that little pin right there? So, and I use this green latch. It's when I have it down at the last stop, because that's going to be my final pass. Okay, I'm going to take this, and let's look in the middle of the turret. There's a center post, and if you see right here, this is ramped. When I take this and turn it, it locks underneath that center post. All right, so what I'm going to do now is see how this is right here. Okay, I'm going to lock it. Then check this out. If I release this, you're expecting this to go flying back, right, off of the plunge springs. It doesn't. Now, let's look at this part right here. This is my micro adjust, and listen. Okay, it's detented. Can you hear that? Okay, as I move it back and forth. So what's happening is instead of fiddle-faddling with it, and I'm going to set it just like this. Big D, I know you're going to get a good shot of this. I could take this and take a piece of wood, pretend it's this piece of wood, okay, and come right in here and look at it. Okay, so if we can see how it's hitting right there, this little part right here, guess what? I'm going to have that little ledge or little fillet on there. So what I'm going to do is very simply, look, dial it in, and you see how that's going to go just like that? A couple of clicks like that, and now I've maximized my profile. So now I know right away I'm going to get this on my final pass.